there, you're welcome to Hiscoff TV, and my name is Collins Nanayao Abebrese. Now, in this video, I have put together top 10 African tribes that were enslaved or that were sold during the transatlantic slave trade in Africa. And we all know that the transatlantic slave trade is one of the inhuman treatment or one of the darkest history in mankind or in humanity, and I believe that it is a way of paying homage to our ancestors. So let me hear your view in the comment section, should in case your tribe is mentioned. If you also think that there are some other tribes which were also enslaved but were not captured in the video, you can also share that with us in the comment section. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel.
At number 1 of most enslaved African tribes are the Mbundu people from Angola. The Mbundu people from Angola were among the most enslaved Africans according to the Atlas of the Transatlantic Slave Trade, with most being transported to Brazil. It was during this period that the legend Queen Nzinga, the Mbundu queen who led a rebellion against Portuguese slave traders, was born. Eventually, the Mbundu presence in Brazil was so high that they began to influence Brazilian culture. At number 2 of most enslaved African tribes, we have the Yoruba. The Yoruba are an ethnic group of southwestern and north-central Nigeria, and they are also one of Africa's largest ethnic groups. Now, going back to the 11th century, the Yoruba were the dominant cultural force in southern Nigeria, and they were heavily engaged in the palm oil trade, which went hand in hand with the transatlantic slave trade. However, the Yoruba were both victims and beneficiaries of the trade, as many Yoruba were dispersed to the Americas. Nevertheless, the Yoruba left an indelible mark on the culture wherever they landed, as Yoruba culture became so prominent that the Yoruba Orisha cult began to be worshipped in North and South America, where it's still venerated today. At number 3 of most enslaved African tribes, we have the Igbo, an ethnic group native to present-day South Central and Southeastern Nigeria. The Igbo are another one of Africa's largest nations, which was also affected by the transatlantic slave trade. Due to the Ero Confederacy, the Ero people, a subgroup of the Igbo, had migrated to Igbo land, creating a demand for slaves and palm oil. The Ero Confederacy captured and enslaved Igbos, selling them to Europeans, with many of the slaves taken from the Biafran coastline, being Igbos, who accounted for approximately 13% of all slaves taken to the Americas. At number 4 of most enslaved African tribes are the Bakongo people. The Bakongo lived along the Atlantic coast of Central Africa in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Just like the Mandinka in Upper West Africa, they created one of the most prominent empires in their region of Central Africa, called the Congo Empire. The Bakongo got involved in the transatlantic slave trade largely due to Portuguese intrusion, which saw the Portuguese seize citizens of the Congo Empire, enslaving them illegally on a mass scale, with the situation becoming so dire that the Bakongo king wrote a letter to the Portuguese king complaining about the slave kidnappings. Eventually, the grandson of the Bakongo king was taken into slavery, and he would enter history as one of Brazilian's most prominent slaves, Kanga Zumba, who would go on to build a big slave compound in Brazil under his own independent administration, where he lived like a king in Brazil. At number 5 of most enslaved African tribes are the Fon of Benin and southern Nigeria. The Fon are the largest ethnic group in Benin and can also be found in parts of southern Nigeria. Now, during the 17th century, the Fon kingdom became well established and it was famous for its Dahomey Amazon female warriors, the inspirations for Black Panthers or female royal guards. The Fon were both victims and beneficiaries of the transatlantic slave trade, and they eventually became a significant population among the enslaved peoples of Haiti and Trinidad. In fact, the new voodoo slave religion that would emerge out of Haiti was directly influenced by the Fon religion, leading to the first successful Black revolution in history with the success of the Haitian Revolution. At number 6 of most enslaved African tribes are the Mende tribe. The Mende people are a collection of ethnic groups all over West Africa that speak the Mende language, with the most widely recognized Mende-speaking nation being the Mandinka nation. The Mandinka built one of the largest empires in West Africa, becoming so prominent that the term Mandingo was coined in reference to their reputation as strong Black men. Mandinka culture was the most dominant in West Africa from around 1100 BC all the way to 1600 AD, when the Mandinka kingdoms around the coastline of West Africa fell victim to the slave trade. Today, the memory of the Mandinka and their history in the transatlantic slave trade has been immortalized in the story of the Amistad slave ship. At number 7 of the most enslaved African tribes are the Fulani ethnic group in West Africa. The Fulani are one of the largest, if not the largest ethnic group in West Africa, from Senegal all the way up to the Central African Republic. The Fulani converted to Islam very early in their history and were the primary slave raiders in West Africa, responsible for selling many African ethnic groups into slavery as they waged jihad accompanied by slave raiding missions. Inasmuch as the Fulani were very active as slave traders, they were also among the most enslaved African tribes. Various Fulani groups were enslaved others in the name of religion, particularly if they did not ascribe to Islam. So Fulani groups that were not Islamic were also victims of the slave trade. At number 8 of most enslaved African tribes are the Abron people. The Abron people lived in the borderlands of Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Burkina Faso, and were at the center of the Gold Coast slave region. As a result, many Abron fell victim to the active slave trade in their area simply because they were located in a region in which the slave trade was intense. Coming in at number 9 of the most enslaved African tribes are the Wolof people of Senegal and Gambia. The Wolof were made up of a variety of separate kingdoms, and constant wars between them led to the enslavement amongst the Wolof, particularly with the arrival of Islam in Senegal, which was accompanied by jihad. Internal Wolof jihads resulted in internal displacement and prisoners of war, who were then traded as slaves. At number 10 of the most enslaved African tribes were the Chamba people of northern Nigeria and parts of Cameroon. The Chamba were constantly raided by Fulani slave traders during the jihads of the 18th and 19th century. Eventually, in order to prevent themselves from being taken as slaves, the Chamba resorted to a resistance campaign in which they retreated to the mountains and attacked slave trading caravans. This had the desired effect and led to less people among the Chamba being taken in as slaves.